We're ready for our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen. A distinguished solicitor, specialises in discrimination law, and active member of Women for Independence. Please, some warm noise for Carol Fox.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Jim Sillars said that the Scottish people hold this referendum in their hands. Actually, a lot of the polls are showing that it's women that hold this referendum in our hands. So, with greatest respect to all our male comrades, I really want to address my remarks to the female voters that are listening and might be watching. And I want to start off with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "The battle for the rights of women is one of long standing, and none of us should countenance anything which undermines it." On the 18th of September, I will be voting yes to protect and to advance the rights of women in Scotland. As a lifelong feminist, I want to tell you why I believe that an independent Scotland will provide a fairer and more representative democracy, which can and must deliver real and lasting equality for women. I'm not a nationalist and I'm not a member of the SNP. For me, this referendum isn't about Alex Salmond. For me, it's not about identity and it's not about being Scottish. Like Elaine, I come from Motherwell, where there are more tower blocks than saltires. For me, it's simple. It's about equality and about democracy, about having our voices heard. And this is a historic chance to have women's voices heard and for us to stand up for our rights loud and clear. We have to take this chance. I was 18 in January 1979, and the first referendum was on the 1st of March 1979. It was my first ever vote, which we did not deliver. We then had the Tories in the same year for 18 years. So I'm taking this very personally. I want a yes vote from this referendum. I was a member of the Labour Party, and I was also a candidate in the Scottish Parliament elections of 1999, 2003 and 2007. Following a great deal of thought, I finally resigned my membership after 30 years. I just cannot put into words my profound disappointment in the Scottish Labour Party. As an individual member, I was not consulted about the Better Together strategy of working with the Tories to ensure that Scotland remained within the UK. Having spent my entire adult life fighting against Tory policies, I was profoundly uncomfortable and disillusioned with the negativity of the no camp and the lack of imagination for the future of Scotland. I wanted the opportunity to make my own intellectual and political mind up. But I did hesitate for some time, because there didn't appear to be a space within the yes camp for those of us that didn't want to automatically identify as nationalists. I just wasn't sure how I was going to play my part. Margot MacDonald kindly took time out of her busy life and took me to lunch last year. She explained that there were many, many roads to voting yes, and Margot believed that we could all make our contribution to building a better Scotland. And I'm going to do everything I can for a yes vote in Margot's memory to the kindness that she showed me when I wasn't sure. I know that there are some women, particularly, they've yet to decide how they want to vote and they don't feel involved in the important campaign for the future of Scotland. Some women are disillusioned by politics and by politicians, and no wonder. I have had comment and made a complaint to the BBC that it's the same talking heads of male commentators and politicians that are being invited onto programmes, and now I'm getting invites to come on at 11 and half 11 at night, which I now have to accept. I think it makes sense for women to take time to weigh things up and consider all the information that's available. But we don't need to become cabinet ministers. We don't need to become economists ourselves. We can make this decision. For ourselves, we can vote yes as mothers, daughters, sisters, aunties, grannies, and great-grannies, because we want a better and a different future for our children and our families. Then we tell the politicians what kind of Scotland we want, and we vote for politicians who have the commitment and the integrity to deliver that future for us. I want an independent Scotland to deliver greater equality. I don't want any more empty promises, warm words, or half-hearted token gestures. I want a greater attention paid to the rights of women. And all the research shows that when you pay attention to the rights of women and you empower their children, and you address child poverty. I want gender pay equality in Scotland, and I want it in my lifetime. In my professional life in the last 30 years, I have tried to make a contribution to building a better society and fighting for the rights of women. As a social worker, a trade union official, and as an equality lawyer, I've taken on vested interests and complacency. I try to challenge the resigned complacency of the naysayers amongst us, those people whose natural instinct is always to rain on everyone's parade. Those in our establishments who design rules and regulations to keep ordinary people and ordinary women in their place. When I set out to become a lawyer as a 39-year-old single parent, I was not bathed in the warm embrace of the Scottish legal profession. Oh no. I was seen as a genie come lately who wouldn't follow the rules, and I said, definitely. All of my working life, I've tried to stand up for disadvantaged women, working in homeless hostels, women's aid refuges, and fighting against discrimination. How dare folk in the No campaign attempt to take the moral high ground and undermine those of us who have fought for a better society for decades? I want to turn to what I have been involved in for the last 6 years in trying to deliver equal pay for 15,000 low-paid women employed in Scottish councils. I have no interest in following rules or propping up establishments which are more concerned about their own survival and doing the right thing than doing the right thing by the people they employ or represent. And that includes the UK government and the UK establishment. Sadly, over 100 of the women I represent have died waiting for equal pay settlements, and it is a disgrace. It is a criminal disgrace in this day and age. It's a bigger disgrace to me, and frankly heartbreaking to me, that the largest cases we have are against Labour councils in the west of Scotland. Just this week, we requested the assistance of ACAS to intervene against North Lanarkshire Council, where we have thousands of equal pay claims. The Better Together politicians have been looking the other way or keeping their heads down during the last decade, while these cases have cost taxpayers millions of pounds in legal fees. These Labour politicians, both locally and nationally, don't seem to care that women are dying waiting for equal pay. How, I ask you, is that better together? For thousands of women with equal pay cases to be waiting for equal pay in 2014. How is it possible, I think I tweeted #livid the other day, how is it possible for Margaret Curran to hold a press conference in this very city just this week, celebrating 44 years of the Equal Pay Act without addressing the situation in their own backyard within Labour councils? It is a disgrace. We all know that the present system has failed, and it certainly failed the women I represent in particular. And Independent Scotland offers us the chance to challenge pay inequality and to challenge the inertia of the UK government. We need to address transparency in pay. We have the ludicrous situation where we have to take a Labour council to the Supreme Court in London at taxpayers' expense before they will release very basic information about the pay of men and women. We have no statutory right to part-time and flexible working. Women only have the right to ask and the right to be turned down. I welcome the childcare strategy and the fact that we're going to invite a lot more working mothers back into the workforce, but we need to have an environment which is friendly to working mothers and working parents. And we need a complete review of piecemeal discrimination legislation, which has grown up topsy-turvy over the last 30, 40 years. We need to review what works and we need to abandon what doesn't work in a bold and progressive way, not in a half-hearted way, where the Equality Act 2010 was brought in and all the previous acts were more or less put in another folder with a new name, but it wasn't a radical revamp of the laws. We don't just need good laws, though. We also need politicians with the political will to enforce equality. I won't take any lectures from Labour MPs or MSPs who have failed and they have lacked courage of their convictions to address inequality on a massive scale within their own councils. I'm so profoundly disappointed in the leadership of the Scottish Labour Party and some good people who continue to remain silent on this issue of equal pay. And I've brought today's Sunday Herald, which has a picture of one of our home helps and a headline which shows that the council have admitted they have no defence to these claims, but they have refused to engage with ACAS. Please do what you can to get on the Twitter feed or the email of North Lanarkshire Council. I've had a couple of phone calls from councillors because I wrote to all our 1,000 women and say, got your local representatives. So some of the local representatives are getting a pretty hard time from some of our home helps. I want to deliver a better Scotland than this. I want better politicians with the courage of their convictions, prepared to deliver real change and real equality. With all the powers in Scotland, the interests of women will no longer fall between the cracks or, far worse, fall right off the agenda. The rights of working women and working parents must become a cornerstone of a new Scotland, and I, for one, will do everything I can to ensure that the commitment to enforce equal pay becomes a reality in an independent Scotland. We must not wait another 40 years. We must have a written constitution which enshrines legal rights and protects access to justice to enforce these rights. My small law firm is also trying to take on the UK government to take a judicial review about the introduction of employment tribunal fees, where a low-paid woman in this city now has to pay £250 before she can lodge an equal pay claim and £1,000 before she can have her case heard. This is not the type of Scotland that I want to live in. I also just want to address a few remarks to single parents, because I am and always have been a proud single parent. My daughter's now 21, and I've always tried to stand up for the rights of women and children. As a single parent, I know the reality of paying hugely expensive childcare and the difficulty of balancing work, paying bills, and caring for your child in the best way you can. It was a devastating blow when, in 1997, when we achieved a Labour government, one of the first acts was to cut single parent benefit. This politics of despair and blaming the poor has been evidenced more recently under the UK austerity agenda and the vote to cap welfare spending, supported by all but a handful of Labour MPs. Those politicians who no longer have the heart for any fight. I don't want to live in a society that blames the poorest and most vulnerable. I want a fairer Scotland which supports and encourages all men and women and children to reach their full potential. And I just want to finish with a small anecdote. It's very difficult to encourage our women to go to a court, be put under oath and be cross-examined in order to win their case, but it's essential. During the last 6 years, I've visited women at home, I've built up relationships with them, I've supported them so that they will go into the tribunal because we can't win the cases without them. One of the women, who was particularly nervous, agreed to do it to represent all the home helps. She went into the tribunal and was explaining what she did for her job, because nobody knew her job better than she did. When it came to being cross-examined by the lawyer on the other side, he was trying to box her into a corner to say she worked as hard as she possibly could and she couldn't get a bonus. And he said to her, "Do you think there's any way that they could design a bonus for your job?" And quick as a flash, she replied, Well, I should think so, son, because they put a man in the moon after all, did they know?" That was an excellent response. I had to stop myself from just bounding up and giving that woman a hug. She won all those cases because she cut through all the nonsense. She just got to the heart of the matter. If we can put a man on the moon, we can deliver gender equality in Scotland, and we can deliver an independent Scotland. I'm going to do everything I can, whether they invite me on middle of the night shows on Sky or whatever it takes, I'm going to do my part. So thank you very much for listening.